Wow. First of all, I would like to compliment this episode for being able to uh, to include so much story and so many plot points, but at the same time, never feeling cluttered, never feeling overstuffed, and never feeling rushed. This episode kept with the kept with the very methodical, very decisively slow pace of the rest of the show, and to be able to do that while juggling this many characters and advancing this many plot lines is pretty impressive. Again, I sound like a broken record for saying this, and this is one of the problems with reviewing TV episodes is that if a show is consistently good, then you eventually run out of things to say that are fresh and new. There's only so many ways you can say this was a good episode. I liked this about the episode because a lot of the time, what's good about one episode is good about the next episode or the previous episode. So I'm trying to avoid that, but in all honesty, I don't really know how much longer I can go. But first of all, judging from the ending to last week's episode, we all kind of knew what was going to happen to Beverly Katz, the Hatian Park character. We all basically knew that she was going to die. But with that said, that does not make it any less tragic and any less horrifying when it is revealed what when it is revealed what eventually happened to her after she died, or after she was killed, would be the more accurate description. And I don't really think this is much of a spoiler because this happens at the beginning of the episode. But she's been basically sliced vertically, separated into 5 different pieces, and put on display in the observatory. Oh wow, this has got to be the most shocking serial killer display since the mural, since the big eye-shaped mural made with corpses that are stitched together. And what makes this more significant, and something that they do address, albeit subtly, is that this is one of our main characters. Or, well, she's not a main character, but she has been basically a strong supporting character since day one. I mean, Hetian Park has been here from the very beginning of this show, and to see her killed off, it shows that this show, it displays that the show isn't afraid to take risks in terms of killing off its main characters. So this basically kind of cements the fact that anyone could die, or almost anyone. and also it makes the impact all the more severe, because if this had just occurred to someone who just showed up for one episode this season, then it wouldn't have had nearly the same impact. But the fact that it was Beverly, it is so shocking. And what I really like is that when Jack brings Will in to examine the crime scene, Jack already has a pretty good idea of who did it. He says it's the Chesapeake Ripper, isn't it? And Will's like, yeah, it's the Chesapeake Ripper. But at the same time, when Will is having to analyze the crime scene, he is basically putting himself in the shoes of the person who killed one of his friends. So naturally, this proves to be pretty difficult for him. This proves to be very painful for him. when he basically has to imagine himself killing Beverly Katz. So I thought that was really well handled. They don't go too in your face with it, because they do establish that Will has a relatively professional outlook on the whole scenario, or at least if taken on face value, which Jack does. He does take this whole thing on face value. He doesn't really think... Well, I shouldn't say that, because Jack obviously knows that this hurts Will, but he doesn't know that Will do what he eventually does. And I won't spoil it for you, but Will makes a serious move against Hannibal Lecter. And it is very courageous on the part of the writers, and it is a pretty risky move on the part of Will. But they do address it. Eddie Izzard comes back as Dr. Abel Gideon, who was manipulated in season 1 by Dr. Chilton into believing that he was the Chesapeake Ripper. So not only does Gideon know who the Chesapeake Ripper is, but that's actually one of the reasons that Will persuaded Chilton to bring Gideon back to the local mental hospital. So not only does Gideon know who the Chesapeake Ripper is, but he also talks to Will and basically and he overhears Will too. So it's kind of, Will's plan isn't revealed until the end of the episode, and it is a pretty bold plan, although Gideon points out that Will is basically overcome with anger, he's overcome with grief, and he basically puts the challenge to Alana Bloom. Once Will comes out of this state of anger and grief, he will either be a murderer or he won't be, and that is up to you. And how Will goes about this, again, I won't spoil it, but how Will goes about this, he basically, it's kind of a callback to Red Dragon. It's kind of a callback and possibly foreshadowing, because they have said that they, in a perfect world, they would really like to go all the way to and beyond Red Dragon. And it's basically a callback to how they eventually communicate with Francis Dollarhide, the serial killer in Red Dragon. So it's a... I liked how they paid homage to it without going too in your face. And also it lent the character of Freddie Lounds some more screen time, and they actually, within 5 minutes, they gave her more humanity than they did in the entirety of season 1. And with a character like Freddie Lounds, that's not easy to do, because Freddie Lounds, by his very nature, sorry for the background noise, but Freddie Lounds, by his very, very nature, because they gender swapped, they gender switched the character in this show. They made Freddie Lounds a woman. But Freddie Lounds, by nature, is a pretty sleazy character, and that's really all there is to him. That's really all that the original story called for. In many ways, the character of Freddie Lounds was kind of a plot device to get in contact and to get a clearer picture of the Francis Dollarhide character, the Tooth Fairy. And after that was done, then Thomas Harris kind of just disposed of Freddie Lounds. So the fact that they're trying to lend a little bit more humanity to the character here, again, is a brave move in that it can be challenging, because like I said, there wasn't really a whole lot to the character. Even when there were very talented actors playing him, like Manhunter, he was played by Stephen Lang, and more recently in Red Dragon, he was played by Philip Seymour Hoffman. So even then, even with those talented actors playing the character, the character didn't really amount to anything more than your typical sleazy journalist. There wasn't really a whole lot to the character. So like I said, I'm interested to see where they go with this character. Am I as invested in her as I am in Will Graham or Jack Crawford or Hannibal Lecter? Of course not. How can I be? Those other characters are much more interesting. But I'm interested to see what at the same time, I'm interested to see where these writers go with all of these characters, Freddie Lounds included. And already that speaks volumes more. That speaks volumes more for the character than has ever been spoken before. But the acting is still fantastic. Hugh Dancy, Mads Mikkelsen, Lawrence Fishburne all shine in this episode. And Carolyn Davernaz, who plays Alana Bloom, she's very good with the limited screen time she has. I hope she gets more screen time before the season ends, because she's always been a pretty likable character on the show. Eddie Izzard got some time to shine in this one. It's kind of like when he showed up in season 1, and B, it's kind of like when Molly Shannon showed up in season 1. Both of them playing serial killers. How this show sometimes takes actors and has them play characters that are radically against type. Because Molly Shannon is known for really crappy comedy. Well, she played a very disturbed and very sad serial killer serial kidnapper in season 1. Eddie Izzard, we all know that Eddie Izzard is also known for comedy, although not nearly as painful as Molly Shannon. But he plays a very serious role as Dr. Abel Gideon, and he does a very good job. Molly Shannon did a pretty good job, but Eddie Izzard, I'm glad they brought his character back, because it gives us a chance to deepen his character a little bit more, because there were kind of a lot of one-off characters in season 1, unfortunately, like Lance Henriksen. I wish they had given him a bit more time. Well, what can you do? Eddie Izzard is back, and he got some interesting stuff to work with in this episode. When it comes to how this advances Will's predicament, if anything, this might set it back, because this episode ends with Jack and Alana basically stopping what Will originally had planned. And up to that point, it was a very interesting plan, and I liked where they were going with it. I liked how Will manipulated aspects and elements that would have previously been abhorred by, or he would have previously despised. He's using these resources that he would have never used before, because he has grown more desperate since he's been in this mental institution, and he sees these as the only option. He sees these choices as the only options for him at this moment. He sees teaming up with someone in this episode, basically his only course of action, the only course of action that will grant him any kind of satisfaction. And like I said, they don't portray it as right. They don't portray it as justice, and they do say that his judgment is extremely clouded within this short span of time after Beverly's murder. So, all in all, a very good episode. I was basically hooked from the first scene, like I am with all these episodes. Even the lesser episodes are not bad. I have not yet seen a bad episode of Hannibal. So that's pretty impressive, and like always, I am completely looking forward to next week's episode and how they inch a bit more towards that flash forward they did at the beginning of the season. So until next week, I wait for the next gruesome sight that this series assaults me with.